Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here today with my friend Erlinda Doherty, who I met when I was in Washington, D.C. for Slow Wine. And we were tasting some of Abruzzo wines, and I asked her what her role was in the industry. And she said, well, I'm a lobbyist and I'm a political consultant and you correct me if I'm wrong, Erlinda, but and I said, wow, I really want to talk to you because I have a lot of questions about organic labeling, about the new labeling requirements, about all this stuff that's coming, that's just come into place, and the grace period's ending. It's a huge mess in our industry. And so I like immediately was like, hey, I need to talk to you. But then, of course, in the meantime, the tariffs have happened. I mean, I was in Washington 2 weeks ago, and now there's news literally right before we got on the call. There a couple hours ago, there was breaking news. So welcome, Erlinda. It's great to reconnect with you. I'm so glad I met you in Washington. I'm just going to dive into the tariff thing because I know that that's what people are going to immediately be looking for. Now, we just heard news that they're going to delay for 2 weeks. People in Italy yesterday, Weinbo, one of the, I'm sure you're familiar with, they announced they're canceling all orders. I don't know if that changes today. What can you give us any insight? I mean, we went through this once before. It wasn't a severe 200% tariffs are, that's a deal breaker on so many levels. So can you share some insights just because of your knowledge and proximity? So
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy. And I appreciate the intro. And it was awesome to meet you at Slow Wine. Here I thought that I was just going to enjoy wine from Abruzzo. And then we ended up talking about all these deeper issues, which of course are, hugely important to our wine industry, which is already dealing with so many headwinds, whether it's social, political, economic, all demographic, all these things. So, but yeah, I mean, like you just mentioned, like about an hour ago or 2 hours ago, lunchtime now, I guess, we heard that the EU was going to delay its imposition of the tariffs on whiskey. And so that also, is going to pause for now, anyway, for at least a couple of weeks, the Trump administration's further imposition in retaliation of the 200% tariff on, imports from Europe, which is, I mean, again, as you mentioned, it would basically, just clamp down and probably close many, many of the importers and suppliers that we have coming into our states. I mean,
fine.
yeah, exactly. So, and yes, you mentioned my background. I am a lobbyist here in DC. I've been following federal and state law for about at least 2 decades now. I'm giving my age away probably, but and on and off for that length of time. Also a sommelier and a wine spirits educator, so I bring that kind of background and that kind of passion into this sort of regulatory space that is confusing and the policy space which changes. And this is unlike anything we've ever dealt with in the past. This sort of chaos, uncertainty that we're experiencing with the current administration has been just very stressful and very anxiety inducing. And so the insight I can really give you right now is, well, yes, we have this pause that's going to be in effect for at least a couple weeks to give time for, the European Union to decide what it wants to do with all the other issues that actually wine has nothing to do with the steel and aluminum and all these other things that the administration here in the U.S. is trying to impact. So wine, as it has in the past, has always been caught in the crossfire for no reason. So I mean, it's really horrible. And a lot of our organizations that are working for the wine industry here have been doing a decent job, a good job actually, of kind of saying, hey, leave wine out of it. This is not about wine. It's not about imported spirits, but it's about something bigger and broader. So leave wine out of it.
How much, one thing that I think a lot of Europeans don't understand is that when Trump tweeted that he was thinking about 200% tariffs, the European media reported that as if it were already in place. And I started getting calls, from some of my Italian colleagues saying, is this going to apply to stuff on the water? Is it going to be on volume? Is it going to be on costs? Of course, I responded, guys, we don't even have the federal code yet. How far away are we from that actually having the tariffs in place? And how do we find out what should we be looking out for? The federal code publication, or is there any place? What do you think the chances are for 200% tariffs, and that we're going to even have tariffs at all?
I mean, again, we're all trying to read the tea leaves here as well. The president is invoking, a rule that hasn't been used for many, many years. The name escapes me now. I'm gonna look through my notes here for a second and cheat to tell you what it's called, but it's been a rule that hasn't been invoked for a very long time. Actually, here we go, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which gives him basically tons of leeway to do whatever he likes, and if he decides that this is an emergency with very little oversight. But these would have to be enforced through the Commerce Department. So again, all kind of done in the executive branch with really no oversight by Congress whatsoever. We just basically have to wait and see if he's going to do, either one-on-one negotiations with certain countries that he calls the dirty 15, if you will, one-on-one, or if he's going to deal with them in a group, or if he's going to do it sector by sector. Are we going to deal, one-on-one with countries, or industry by industry? So we just don't really know. And I think this week, I think what we've been hearing here in DC is that because of the stock market being so erratic, that basically we've had a pause this week to kind of see if the market would calm down, and then we would revisit all these issues next week. Now, because again, the April 2nd deadline for the tariffs that would affect the countries in the USMCA, so that being North American countries, Canada, Mexico, have to be revisited by April 2nd. So we expect a lot of activity to happen next week. All this would have to happen again through the Commerce Department would be the ones that are sort of enforcing or implementing these changes. But again, they're all coming from the executive branch with very little oversight from Congress.
And do you think, realistically, do you think that the Trump administration or even Congress feels the pain of someone not like me, but like a mid-tier importer who's really looking at this is existential? I'm going out of business. If I have to deal with a month-long period of 200% imports, and there's no exemption for container on the water. Yet 2 days ago, the U.S. Wine Trade Alliance sent out a communication saying, stop, do not order any wine because you might be stuck with, and yet yesterday, Winebo, the biggest, one of the two biggies for Italian wine, sent out an email to everybody saying, we're canceling all of our orders. Do you think that the United States government hears when I say our pain, the kind of progressive wine, not progressive, but the mid and small tier wine, do they hear our pain, or,
it's hard to imagine that he does. I know, again, I have faith in our trade organizations here in DC that are really fighting for the industry, for the rights and to be the voice of the industry. They've been doing they've been doing yeoman's work. They've been sending out letters to Congress, the administration, to the federal government to really, express that all this is inducing chaos and uncertainty and causing.
Right?
Well, yeah. And so I think that's. I don't. The Trump administration obviously has these larger issues that are important, I think, and I get it, but again, I think wine is just unfortunately being caught in the crossfire. So while I understand that there are larger issues at play here with other industries, there really is no reason for wine and spirits to be part of this discussion of this destruction. So again, I have faith that our organizations here that are doing their best to really, be the voice and to advocate for our industry. But even with all that, it feels like we're being ignored in some ways, in a lot of ways, actually.
I know in the last Trump administration, when the tariffs were in place, I was enlisted because of a Texas congressperson, and I certainly didn't feel like my voice, I don't think it really mattered. The answer I kept getting was, why don't you just switch to American wine? And so we all know that story. And listen,
Well,
I'm hoping in a couple of weeks when there's a new announcement, when there's a new that maybe you'll come back on my blog and I can ask you again to explain that. I hope that'll be the case.
thank you.
Tell me a little bit, about how, I mean, it's so unusual to meet someone who works in law, lobbying in Washington, but also as a sommelier and also as I mean, I immediately, recognize in you a colleague. And can you tell me a little bit about, I mean, was wine later in your life? Was wine at the beginning? How did that story go?
That's a really good question. So yeah, I have I began my career, I guess, my adult professional career as a lobbyist in both the federal sphere, and then later on in the state sphere. But wine has always been something I've been very passionate about and have always enjoyed consuming and learning about. And I'm about, let's see, 2017. I started taking classes just for myself because I was very interested. So I took the WSET
Mhm.
level 3 and did an intensive course here in DC. But this was back before Zoom, so you had to come in person and sit in a classroom and take the full course in a week and do all the tastings. And that just kind of that was the bug for me, I guess. After that, I took a few more courses, the CSW and then the Cours de Sommeliers as well. And I just have always loved wine. I love how it's been, how it's the amalgamation of all the great things of the world, right? So history, science, religion, culture and art. And I just always loved traveling and learning about wine. And so as I kind of progressed in my career and became a consultant, and realized that that the thing that I loved so much was being affected by all this activity, both at the state and federal level.
Mhm.
It kind of just it got me very interested in starting to learn to advocate for it, to really understand the regulatory at the state level as well as the federal level, and also understand this trade, how international trade affects, our beloved industry. So, yeah, so I guess in some ways I combine my professional, career with my passion, and here I am
Now
today.
we need to get you to Texas to lobby against the three-tier system. That'll be for another lifetime.
Yeah.
And listen, the whole our whole conversation in Washington got started because we were talking about Abruzzo wines, we were talking about organic farming, we were talking about organic certification, and of course, right now our industry, beyond the tariffs, was already in turmoil because
Hmm.
nobody knows what there's new organic labeling and requirements in place, there's new nutritional requirements in place, and of course, at the same time, the FDA is being gutted of its staff. Even prior to that, I was hearing importers and distributors saying, hey, I'm trying to get, I want to keep selling wines that say made with organic grapes, and I can't even get anybody on the phone. And you were telling me that part of your service is to help, talk to wineries, importers. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do as a consultant?
Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, as you know, wine labeling is, I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, our friends in the EU have been sort of further along in the labeling department because they've been doing it for some time now and kind of understand the importance of it, and using technologies like QR codes to make it, a little bit easier to include all that information. But yeah, in the United States, it's become, of course, is the largest market for the EU and for many products. We've had quite a few changes in the last few years that have could be quite burdensome and also confusing. And actually, as you mentioned, right now, we aren't sure what's going to happen with the current proposed rule for nutritional labeling, which I also find it interesting that they're not asking for things like residual sugar and things like that, and that we actually and additives that a wine consumer may actually care about. But things like carbs and fat and proteins, which we already know really don't exist in wine. So anyway, but yeah. So right now, actually, the current proposed rulemaking, is occurring, and this closed the comments for this last round of labeling closes April 17th, and there's been a lot of folks that have been commenting on it. But at the end of the day, we still don't even know with the new administration if these actual laws or rules will be, accepted and approved, and what the timeline will be for implementation. Now, we do know that this year, that's by July 1st, we have containers requiring specific language for wines that are sold in California. And so, of course, California being a huge market for U.S. wine, for EU wine as well, people, if they're trying to sell wine in the United States, need to follow those rules as well. So yes, I do help our friends, navigate the wine labeling situation. Also, if they are interested in having their voice put forward in terms of the rulemaking process to advocate for their concerns, that is also something that that I help with. But also just understanding what those requirements are and how to navigate that process, as you said, especially as no one is there to answer the phone and really kind of walk you through the process.
A friend of mine who's in Porter told me that the only point of contact she has is the inspector that comes to inspect her warehouse facility. She's organic. I mean, she's already ahead of the curve. But to your point, you said July 1st. If your label says organic anything on it and it's coming in the United States, it's going to have a whole new level of scrutiny, including the importer and the distributor. Essentially, wine could even get to a distributor and it says, organic's not allowed on the label because they haven't followed the right protocols. And that distributor could be penalized for, a mistake that was made upstream. So I think
yeah,
I bet you have your work cut out for you. I mean, the Europeans can't even understand why we have, one of the most bizarre things about organic wine in the United States is that for wine to be labeled as organic in the United States, it has to be spontaneously fermented. And that's something the Europeans just don't. They said it's all about the growing. It's not
right.
about and then we can, argue the finer points, split hairs about is, native yeast or no native yeast. They don't care. They care about the growing.
Right.
So it's strange. We have all these disconnects.
Yes.
Well, listen, Erlinda, it's such I have 1,000 questions. I hope you'll come back and maybe I can convince you to make this a regular thing. And I am it's great to meet you. And I'm hoping you'll explain this whole tariff thing, and then we can shift once we get that sorted out. Maybe we can shift to organic and nutritional labeling.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I would love to. And I, again, appreciate that opportunity to be here. And you're right. Once we get past these tariffs, which I hope we do, I'm praying that we do, then yes. And not just, by the way, I can't believe I forgot to bring this up, but the organic labeling or the nutritional labeling, but also this idea that whether or not wine should carry cancer warning labels. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother thing that I've been advocating strongly against. And, so that's something we should definitely chat about too, because that's the other, big problem here is, I mean, well, we could spend hours talking about that, but that's also a huge issue that is of great import to our industry.
I've seen that on your social media, and of course, that before Trump, that was that was one of the big issues our industry right now. That's been all put on the back burner or back fermenter, as it were, because we've got such. And I do want to end our conversation by saying, there are people right now who are looking at shutting down their businesses. They're saying it's just. I mean, yesterday when this email went out from Winebow, I called a couple of friends that are with Winebow, and we're facing an up and down that I'm so glad you made a point of saying that we have nothing to do. This is about aluminum. It's about steel. It's about planes. It's about cars. It's about China. It's not. And of course, I couldn't help thinking when you were talking about your own wine journey, to use a cliche, that it's the very cultural element of wine that makes us vulnerable to the why these are so connected to the to the French identity, the Italian identity, the Spanish identity, just like whiskey's very much part of the Kentucky identity.
Yes, absolutely.
I couldn't help but laughing today when I was reading one of the accounts in the Times or the Post, which I'm devouring these days to see if any news from our industry with Vin Italy is around the corner. And evidently the Europeans thought they would tax whiskey because it would hurt Mitch McConnell's state. And then someone pointed out, well, Mitch McConnell's not in power anymore. He's a senator. He's on his way out. And it's so arbitrary. I mean, we really feel like we're just, these fish in a sea of these huge whales around us. Well, listen, please share with us, what's the name of your social media handle?
Sure. Yeah, Vinícola. So, which means winery in Spanish, by the way. So, yeah. And then I also have a website. Yeah, Vinícola, right? Exactly. And I think does it mean winery in Italian too? I can't recall. It might.
Well, Azienda, there's two, Azienda Vinícola is a is a bottler.
Okay.
Azienda Agricola is a farmer, is a grape grower. So yeah, it does mean winery.
Okay, great. Yeah. So that's how I came, because my mother was from South America and I'm bilingual. So I don't know. I thought it was a fun name, for the.
It's great. I just want to make sure that anybody who's watching, I bet we're going to have Erlinda back. I'm trying to turn my blog into a resource for people who are trying to navigate the stuff. So
that's great. Thank you.
Let's all say a prayer.
Yes.
And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Erlinda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, great to reconnect with you.
Thank you.